This is the A. I'm Reg Clay. Normally Norman G would be here, but he is taking a 3-day vacation with his wife Mara. And this is the A, where we talk about life in the theater and the theater of life. We want to thank Central Works for sponsoring the A. Central Works is headed up by Gary Graves and Jan Sleifler. Central Works, reinventing theater one play at a time. And I have a fantastic guest, a lady who is a playwright, a poet. You've been published in the New York Times. Alison Luterman. Alison, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, especially now. I mean, I tell you this week,
I
Norman,
know.
Norman, Norman and I have been talking just, politically, and
Yeah.
it's all of us have been on pins and needles, but
Uh,
finally the sun is out. So how have you been taking, I guess, this whole political landscape and I don't know,
oh,
the end of the age of Trump.
please God. Yeah, like everybody. I mean, like everybody. Last Saturday was so incredible when it was finally called for Biden. Got in the car and drove down to the lake, Grand Lake, in front of Grand Lake Theater. People were dancing and singing, and we didn't get out of the car because it was too many people and you couldn't park. But it was just the joy was wonderful, and we just want to be part of it. And tears were shed. I mean, both of us, my husband and I both cried with relief, I think, and joy. And of course, the way Trump is acting, it feels a lot like King Lear to me. I mean, since we're talking about theater, I feel like we're living through Mad King Lear. I mean, he really is insane in my.
Yeah, it's almost like George the Second, or I think it was George the Third. I forget who was the Mad
Yeah,
King, the
yeah,
Madness of King George. Yeah, but it
yeah.
is, and it's odd because I mean, and it's good to to have you on because I've had a couple of people who are involved in theater, but they're also involved in what I would call holiness or using theatrical tactics to sort of in therapy to cleanse the mind and to really focus on the
Right.
spirit. And I really believe, I mean, I can't think of a president that has triggered so many people emotionally
Yeah.
as Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
how's he affected your, I guess, spiritual life? And I know that you are very, very connected to your spirit.
Wow, that's such an amazing question. Thank you for asking it. Honestly, I think Trump is here. I think the purpose of Trump, the big spiritual purpose, is to show us our own shadow, to show us where, uh, so what I've seen arising in myself is not pretty. I mean, like hatred, I've felt like visceral, like so much rage and like a violence within myself and snobbery and so, like I think Trump was elected on white supremacy, and basically he's the white supremacist president,
Yeah.
and it's easy to condemn white supremacy, which I do. Then I have to look inside myself of like, where do I have supremacy inside me? Where am I feeling superior to other people? Where am I feeling like some people are more worth more, some people are better than, and looking at the shadow. So I think the whole Trump regime, and especially this last year, is the word would be reckoning. It's a time of reckoning, racial reckoning, political reckoning, emotional, spiritual reckoning, like reckoning with what's there, and especially the stuff we don't want to look at.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it was a Nietzsche statement where he says, in fighting demons, we cannot become demons, or fighting evil, we cannot become evil ourselves.
Yeah,
um, because
yeah,
we can very easily mimic the very thing that we're trying to fight against.
yeah,
And unfortunately, a lot of people are motivated more by anger than by love,
right,
unfortunately. And
right.
sometimes we have to watch ourselves, to make sure that we're not parroting the very thing that we're fighting against. But it is an amazing civics lesson. I would never think you'd think that these things happen in third world countries or
Right,
in
right,
communist countries, but never in
right,
America. And here
right.
we are, you know.
Right. I mean, just like 2 weeks before the election of 2016, I saw the production at Berkeley Rep of It Can't Happen Here. It's an amazing play. Who's it? Was that Sherwood Anderson? Who? I can't remember the writer,
Mm.
but it was, and my husband and I said to each other uneasily, well, ha ha ha, that's, good play and can't happen here. And like 2 weeks later, it happened here. So it's been erasing the denial. And yeah, and to paraphrase Nietzsche, to, how do you combat hate without becoming hateful yourself? And I confess that I have not succeeded. I've felt a lot of hatred sometimes during the last 4 years, and I feel tremendous relief. And then when you heard Biden speak and Kamala Harris speak, just to hear two grown-ups talking and making sense and being moving and talking about empathy and compassion and working together. I mean, I was weeping then too. It's like, oh my God, it's been 4 years since I've heard a leader speak like a leader. Um, but again, I think we're living through mythic times, and it's hard to live. Plague, Mad King. We have all these like really big things that are part of classic theater, but they're happening now.
Yeah, 2020 has been really, really very strange, and of course, all of our, we're so used to our rituals. We're so used
Right.
to doing things every day and having our keys with the way it's supposed to be, and
Yeah.
our parking space right there. And it's
Right.
interesting how we react when our lives are disrupted. And
Right.
sometimes the lesson, for ourselves is like, hey, listen, just because things are normal, how will you react when things are not normal? I think of Rod Serling's the Twilight Zone episode, the monsters are due on Maple Street. Everything is normal, but then strange things happen, and then all of a sudden people attack one another, only
Right.
because things are not as normal as they used to be. And
Right.
just it's a lesson, if we um, if we're knocked out of our normalcy, how truly human are we? And sometimes, things that happen in life can be a reflection of ourselves.
Right.
It's interesting that you mentioned 2016 when Trump was elected, because it was the very next year that I worked with you. We
Yeah.
did the Musical
Yeah.
Cafe and we did the chain. And has anything
Hmm.
happened with the chain? Has it, because you worked with the late, oh, I have the poster right there, Lauren Leonard.
Lauren Leonard, yeah,
Yeah, Leonard, yeah.
he died just a few months before you and I started working together. He died
Wow.
in early December 2016, and then I got onto the next stages thing and pulled together a little excerpt from our show to do, and found you to be my Chester, and
Hmm.
which was wonderful. No, it's on pause. I mean, I feel like it needs another revision, which it probably does. And Lauren, of course, is not here to do that or to write the incidental music. We do have, a full slate of songs that he wrote, and he wrote beautiful music. And I would like it to stay alive, both because I think it's a good play. I think it has things to say to people, and also because it's the last thing that Lauren did, and it was a beautiful thing, and he poured his heart and soul in it, and we really enjoyed working on it together. And at the time I met you, I was really full of like, I need to carry this forward, but how am I going to carry this baby forward, without my partner?
Oh, sure. And I think you're working on other things as well. The beautiful thing about the play The Chain, although it was only a 20-minute, we talked a lot about the Musical Cafe last week,
Right.
how budding musical writers can get together and write, let's say, just snippets or excerpts of their play
Right.
to get it exposed, and maybe it'll rise to the next level, or you realize how many change, what work it needs to be
Yeah.
done. But it's still a wonderful venue. I mean, we were at the Shotgun Players,
Yeah.
which is a wonderful venue, and we had a wonderful audience, and it's just a great place. And I met so many individuals that I've been working nonstop with. It's a wonderful thing about theater, where you can connect with individuals like Nick Mandrakia
Mm.
and a bunch of others who I met at that venue, and we've
Wow.
gone on to do other things. And so it's sort of the really is like proverbial, like the chain. It's like, people are connecting one another, and then
Yeah.
you move on to
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
So even if the chain sort of is on hiatus, it did some amazing things. Like I worked with Rachel. I worked with her on my
Yeah.
little musical the very next, I think it was only a couple of months later.
Yeah. Nia, you did.
That's right,
Yeah. You
Nia.
did Nia. Yeah. I mean, and this is, and now all theater's been disrupted, of course. And,
Hmm.
Richard and I have been working on something for a couple of years, and God knows when we'll be able to mount it. But what I'm coming around to is maybe it's enough, and maybe I'll do this with the chain. Like what we've got in with the piece that I'm doing with Richard, the Shyest Witch, is we've got some scenes that have been filmed, and the songs have been recorded. And so you can put those little scenes up on YouTube, and so people can get a taste of the songs, the scene. It's not the same as seeing a whole play in a theater, of course, but it is something. And maybe with the chain, you're just making me think this, that I could produce like some little scenes of, a song or two or
Oh, sure,
three.
snippets. And then people can decide, wow, I really like that. You can see how many
Yeah,
likes or whatever. I mean, that's a good thing about YouTube. You
right,
can really sort of test the waters without really investing a lot of resources in, what you're
right.
doing, just to find out, hey, is this going to work or not? And then if it does, if there's enough likes, then you can go further. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
idea. So I'd love to get into an origin story. How did you get involved in theater? Where were you born and raised? And
Oh,
when did the theater bug bite you?
yeah. I was born on the East Coast. I was born in Pennsylvania. My family moved to Massachusetts when I was 2, so I was really raised in the suburbs of Boston. My mother loved theater, and she acted in plays when she was in high school, but I think she got kind of shy around. I don't know. I wish she had gone further with it, but she used to take me to plays when I was a kid. And I specifically remember seeing a community theater production of The Crucible when I was about 10
Arthur
or
Miller.
11. What's that?
Arthur Miller. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Crucible.
yeah, yeah. And I didn't breathe. I was young enough so that it was just real to me. I just remember I was like, for the whole second act, and that bit me hard. And then I went to a camp, summer camp, where they put on plays. And one of the plays that the summer camp put on was Lorraine Hansberry's The Sign in Sidney Brewstein's Window. And that's an amazing play. And I saw that when I was pretty young also. And I fell in love with Lorraine Hansberry, and I carried her plays around with me in my school bag, in a high school. And so I just got an early sense of what it could be and what it could do. And I saw Hair when I was pretty young too, as a musical. I wasn't into like South Pacific or any of the old musicals, but I loved Hair, and then Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell. I know I'm dating myself, but these were all,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I remember talking to, I forget who, maybe Joel Knopf. I remember I
Mhm.
had him on the A. But in any case, yeah, that during that time, the 70s, musicals were sort of changing. You didn't have the
Yeah,
Sondheim and the Mirages and Hart and the standards way of producing musicals. It sort of borrowed from the 60s, the hippie generation.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you were old, or do you consider yourself a hippie, or were you too young to be that?
I was a little too young. I was born in 1958, so 1968, 69, summer of love, I was still a kid. But I sort of, in my sensibilities, I am a hippie, and I listen to all that music. And I mean, I used to listen to the Hair. My parents had the Hair album, and I would listen to it like come home from school, junior high, push all the furniture in the living room, to the side, put on the Hair record, and dance my, just, and also with Jesus Christ Superstar, and also with Godspell. Those records, were a really big deal for me. And I didn't even think of them as traditional musicals. Like the musicals my high school put on were Carousel, which I thought was corny and sexist, and Once Upon a Mattress. I wasn't in any of those, but I was president of the drama club. Went to a high school that had both a drama club, and then they also did musicals. And I, at that point, was a real snob about musicals, and I was doing drama, and it was intense, and I was like to play Tennessee Williams heroines who were dying of unnamed venereal diseases, and like that was my wheelhouse. and and also I wasn't really a good singer. I'm not a great singer, so I was too shy to audition for a musical anyway.
But you saw
um,
yourself as an actress. I mean,
yeah,
did you
I
love being
really
on
love to
stage?
act. Yeah,
Mm.
I loved to act, and in another life I would have pursued it more thoroughly. I think again I was shy. I got a little shy as I got older, but I loved it. Really, really loved it a lot.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to college for 2 years at Emerson, which is a theater school. My father was teaching there, not in the theater department. He was teaching in communications disorders, which is like audiology. So I could go there for free. And I regret that I didn't take more advantage of the theater that was there. Like I was at Emerson at the same time that guy, Dennis, what's his name? He does a TV show about a
Oh,
fighter.
Dennis Leary. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was a
yeah,
comedian, and then he started doing serious stuff.
right. He
Yeah.
was a senior when I was like a freshman. So he, and I never spoke to him. I mean, he was like a god even then, and I was a lowly, freshman. But I wish I'd been a little bolder. But anyway, then I transferred to UMass after 2 years, University of Massachusetts, and I finished up there. I love theater, but I also was really pulled towards social justice and languages and English. I was writing a lot, and I hadn't figured out. It's so weird because I was doing writing and I love theater, but I didn't really put playwriting together till much later. Even though in high school I wrote a play, and I told you I was president of the drama club, so I
Hmm.
produced a series of student written one act plays. So I was doing all that stuff in high school, and then I don't know, I got caught up in other things, and I sort of forgot that I knew how to do that for a long, long time.
Yeah, I'm noticing that in academia, there's really not. I mean, no one really, like same thing with me. I've written a lot of one acts, and I wrote one full length play, but really no one ever told me in college or in high school or whatever that playwriting was a path
Yeah,
towards doing anything. And even, I took a class, Berkeley rep Garrett Graves has a playwriting class, and he
right.
says, listen, you're not going to get rich, being writing a play unless, it goes and you get a Tony or something like that, but it really isn't like a clear path. So I imagine literature, maybe, like maybe book writing is something that people do because you can get on, I don't know, the New York Times bestsellers list or something like that. Did you see literature as more of a path rather than playwriting at the time?
Honestly, I was really groping, in college. I mean, they had to sort of put a gun to my head to make me declare a major. Like I was taking classes in every department. I would have stayed if I could have. I would have just stayed and gotten like three BAs in, sociology, and I did end up with an English degree. And I guess I, I was really being put. My parents were like, get a teaching certificate, which was very good advice, which I refused to follow. It was great advice. I'd never got a teaching certificate because I thought, oh, that's a girly thing. Like women, are always being told they have to be nurses or teachers or secretaries. And I'm a feminist and I want to do, I don't want to teach. Well, turns out I really love teaching. And when I graduated college with a BA in English and no idea what I was going to do, I joined Vista, Volunteers in Service to America.
Ah, Vista, yeah.
Yeah, and I got sent to Miami to work with Haitian refugees because it was 1981, and there was a whole influx of refugees coming into Miami at that time. Both Cuban, there were Cuban people, refugees, because Castro had emptied his jails and sent everybody to Miami, and then a lot of Haitians were like just getting in these makeshift rafts and dinghies and just desperately coming. And because I speak French, I got put with working with Haitians, and some of my cohort in Vista got put with working with Cubans. And I got really caught up in social justice work with refugees, and I did that for years. And I taught English as a second language, and that's when I discovered that, oh, I love teaching, and I'm actually born to teach. And I didn't know that until I did it because
Wow.
I was resisting. I didn't. My parents are both teachers, and I was not going to be a teacher. I was going to be anything but a teacher. And of
No,
course,
no, I totally understand that.
yeah.
No, when you mentioned Vista, one job that I had just before I came to the Bay Area, because I'm originally from Washington D.C.
Mm,
I worked for the Corporation for National Service, which dealt with AmeriCorps, NCCC, and Vista. It was all sort
right.
of housed into one, at least the main office, and then they had the satellite offices where volunteers would go and help out people. So, what brought you to the Bay?
I met a man after Vista. I hitchhiked across Canada with a crazy Frenchman who was a communist. He couldn't get a visa to get into the United States because he was a communist. Long story. I left him in Vancouver because he was crazy. Hitchhiked down to the Bay Area and stayed with a girlfriend from high school. I slept on her couch for a month, and while I was here, I met the man who became my first husband. And 3 years later, he joined me in Massachusetts. We lived there together for a few years. We got married there, and then he really wanted to come home to the Bay. So I followed a man. But I fell in love with the area too. I mean, I was in love with the Bay Area, and I realized quickly that there was just much more opportunity for me here than in Boston, because I didn't want to be in school. I didn't want to, for whatever reason. Once I was done with school, I was kind of done. And the Bay Area is a place where you can say I'm a writer. I want to. I could teach. I've been hired to teach for years and years now, and I've just found my way here. And
Yeah, I've asked a lot of folks who are, because I think a lot of folks are transplants. What was the Bay Area like? Because I imagine you came, what, in the mid 80s or in the 90s?
I came in 1990 exactly, New Year's Day, 1990.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, I'm sure it's night and day, between the Bay
History.
Area now and what it was
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, well, I mean, the obvious things, the rents were affordable and, the freeways were not totally clogged and I mean, it was difficult for me just because I was going through this big kind of quarter life crisis or midlife crisis of like, what am I doing here? And my family and my friends are on the East Coast, and it took me a long time to adapt and adjust and find my people, find my thing. And then my marriage started falling apart pretty soon after we got here, and we separated in '94, and I got divorced after that. And then I was on my own, without my family here, and that was tough. But the Bay Area itself was, it felt like well, Boston's a kind of closed place, like where you have to prove yourself a little bit, and people are not quick to call you their friend. You have to kind of earn it. And here it feels like people don't make you jump through hoops. They'll be friendly right away, more so. So yeah, it was just easier. I mean, I remember even when I separated from my husband and I needed to find an apartment, I found an apartment for like $500 a month, which would be impossible now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
It's funny because I remember being in. It's funny. I had a couple of questions because you came in 1990. That was a year after the big earthquake, and I
Yeah,
imagine I don't know if you had just missed it, or if you thought, "Wow, do I really want to go?" Because
yeah,
things are a little
yeah,
crazy.
totally. No, we were en route because we drove across country in this, beat up old 65 Ford, and we were in some tacky motel in like North Carolina, and the desk clerk said, we wrote down our destination was San Francisco, and he said, "Oh, they just had a big earthquake," and we were like, "Ha ha ha!" He was like, "No, go turn on the TV," and we did, and it was like, "Oh my God, where are we?" I was terrified. I was terrified. It looked like the whole marina was burning. My husband and I had a huge fight about would it be better to die by fire or drowning if you were on a bridge.
Oh, that's an interesting argument.
I was so nervous, so scared. Um,
And it
yeah.
didn't. It didn't deter you to.
Well, no, I mean, he had lived here his whole life. He was a Berkeley boy. So and then I sort of adapted like one does here. I mean, we all kind of we know that there's earthquakes and we just live our lives here. And,
Yeah.
you know,
There you go. Yeah, it's funny, and also I visited Boston. I've never been there. I lived in New York for 5 years. I went to school
mm,
and then I stayed an extra year. And I imagine Boston and New York are a little bit. The similarity is, yes, it is very multicultural, but people are in their little cliques or their little. You
yeah,
can't. I can't walk. I can't be a black man and walk into, let's say, an Italian neighborhood in Boston or New York,
absolutely
or
right.
there would be a fight or something like that. So it's very territorial, and you don't have that here in the Bay Area. I noticed that immediately when I came here.
Yeah.
What was your first foray in theater? I mean, did you get back into acting, or
Hmm.
how did you get yourself back?
It's back in Boston before I moved out here. I There was a group called the Boston Theater Group, and they were doing a show called a Crooked Eclipses, a theatrical meditation on Shakespeare's sonnets. And I got into that, and it was amazing experience, one of the best experiences of my life. And at one time, I had memorized, a couple dozen of Shakespeare's sonnets, and we just worked with the sonnets. We rehearsed every night, 5 nights a week for 4 hours. I mean, it was incredible, big commitment. And we played with the sonnets. Each of those sonnets is like a little play all by itself, like a little 14-line play. We moved, we threw ourselves at the walls. I mean, it was, there was singing, there was everything, and we worked out pretty hard physically. It was just an incredible experience that I hope someday I get a chance to do something like that again. Real deep immersion. And of course, I was really young then. I didn't have a real job, and so it was more possible to give that kind of time.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I did that. And then when I came out here, I tried to hook up in various ways with plays and Jawbone Theater. Do you know Louisa Tiche at all? She's a
No.
she's a storyteller. She's great, and she had a little theater group called the Jawbone Theater Group. It was kind of a storytelling theater group, and I don't even remember how I got hooked up with them. But I was looking. Well, I think it was the East Bay Express had ads in the back for like at that time because things
Mm-hmm.
it was before everything was online. So newspaper notices of like plays happening or auditions, and I always felt like I was on the outskirts of the theater world trying to get a little toehold in, and meanwhile worrying about, well, what am I going to do for a job, and having various different kinds of jobs, and managing all the other stuff that you manage in life.
Yeah. What are some of the, did you get back on stage? Did you work at any of the theater companies here?
I didn't work with anything major. I did little tiny things on stage, but nothing, not anything with a theater company that you would know.
Okay. Like I
Yeah.
know about the San Francisco Fringe Festival, sometimes they have little things or
Oh yeah. Oh, I did a thing. Actually, do you remember when Julia Butterfly was up in her tree for 2 years?
I'm
Um,
vaguely familiar with that.
she did. This woman named Julia Butterfly did a 2 year tree sit. She was up on a redwood tree for 2 years so that it wouldn't get cut down. She's protesting clear cutting old growth redwoods. And I thought that would be a great idea for a children's play. So I said that to a friend of mine, and we created a little theater group. What's it called? Dolphin. Well, she had a theater group called Dolphin Tales Story Theater, and we just recruited some people and co-wrote all together. It was kind of a devised theater piece of the girl who climbed a tree and became a butterfly, and we ended up going to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, which was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was 1999, and
Hmm.
the whole group of us we did some kind of Airbnb thing. Like we were all sleeping to get in this tiny little apartment, like sleeping on the floor and doing our little children's show in the morning, and then literally seeing theater all day long, like because there's plays happening every spare nook and cranny. It was a beautiful experience for like 2 or 3 weeks in Edinburgh, and
Wow. Wow. That is
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, that was really great.
How did you get connected with Musical Cafe or Play Cafe?
It How did that happen? It was after Lauren had just died, and I must have seen something online and followed it up, and I can't even remember. I do remember that I was really freaked out because I felt like I had this huge responsibility for this play that Lauren and I had done, and what's his name, Rice Clay. Have you? I mean
Ice Major?
Rice Major. Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
so kind to me because I had reached out to them and they were like, "Yeah, submit your thing." And I was like, "But," and they sent me what you have to do. And I had to take this whole play that Lauren and well, I wrote it, but, we had collaborated every step of the way. And I had to figure out what 20 minutes worth to take and which songs to choose. And it felt like a lot. I was kind of overwhelmed. And Rice kindly like met me for coffee and kind of talked me through it and said he would help me, and he did help me. And then Jerome was really kind. Like everybody was so kind and has continued. Jamie is like the soul of generosity. Richard is fantastic. Like everybody's been incredibly kind and welcoming to me. And I
Yeah.
still feel like a
I'm
huge.
trying to think of the who was our director? Oh shucks, I
Oh,
forget
it's
his
Jonathan Levy. Is it his
Jonathan Levy.
name?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. He was
Yeah.
fantastic as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, he was somebody that I knew. I joined this improv troupe called Wing It. Um, and that I had been doing. So Jonathan and I had worked together in Wing It for years and years. And we had a kind of relationship that you have when you're doing improv with somebody, where you can just sort of throw the ball and you're not even looking, and you know that they're going to run up behind you and catch
Yeah,
it.
yeah. There's definitely intimacy and there's a sort of spontaneity, that a
Yeah.
connection that you have between two. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had, been on stage together a lot. So I was on stage. I sort of, it's like all these different things were happening at, kind of overlappingly with jobs and, boyfriends and marriages and all that stuff. But I got involved with a group called Interplay in like the early 2000s, 2002, 2001, 2002, which is a movement, vocal, storytelling, improv group. Well, Wing It was a group, and Interplay is the process that we used. And I met Jonathan there, so I've known Jonathan for almost 20 years. And yeah, we had worked together. And then he had played the part that Jerome played in our little show. He had played that before, or he had played the role.
Right, right. For those who don't know, so the chain is basically about individuals who have dialysis or who have kidney, they need a kidney transplant. And it's
Right,
basically about people connecting with one another and really loving and caring for one another,
right.
even if they belong in different cultural
Yeah.
dynamics. Like my character, I was a black man who needed a kidney, and my wife, played by Rachel Bowman, and you may have heard Rachel has moved.
Yeah, she's in Georgia now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's in Georgia now, and I was so
Yeah.
sad to see her go. But in any case, so she was my wife, and she was a very staunchly religious woman, who was like, no, 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 you can't get your kidney from that individual because that individual is sinful. And of course, the individual was, I think, a gay man
No,
who at
it was also what is it? Is it Seventh Day Adventist or what's the other one? Jehovah Witness. It was
Jehovah's Witness. That's right, she was
yeah,
Jehovah's Witness.
and they
Yes,
have a thing where they don't do transplants because of some interpretation of a Bible verse. So it was that, but
right,
but
right.
also they're pretty against you know uh, people being gay. So then
Which is unfortunate. And Jerome Gentis played that. But you're saying prior to that, it was Jonathan Levy who played that character.
he didn't play your character, but he played the gay man. Yeah,
He played Jerome's character. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
yeah, so no, it was a wonderful. I mean, it was, of course, it was very small. It's just we only got a little snippet of it, but it was still very, very touching and heartfelt. And anyone's like, a play about someone with a disability. Well, now in 2020, now illness is right there on the front map with
right,
everyone dealing
right.
with and also caring for one another. Wearing a mask means that you care for yourself, but you also care for someone else. So I think I don't know. I think that's a little snippet that I got from the chain, and like I
Yeah.
said, it was a nice, wonderful experience. And did you enjoy your overall experience with the Play Cafe, Musical Cafe?
Oh, so much because like I was just saying, everybody was so kind and welcoming and cooperating and helpful and
Yeah,
you
and
know,
not just one piece, but everyone. I mean, like
everyone.
having the circle gathering, and it's very clear when Jerome was held when he ran it, because I think he doesn't run it anymore. I think it's run by someone else, but he made sure that all of us were working towards one another. It's not a competition between
No, 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 no.
one group
Yeah,
or
I think
another.
Richard was the executive director after him, and I don't know. There's the board. There's Sandy. I mean, Richard has been running it for a while. I
Hmm.
think when you did Nia, I think Richard was the head of it at that point. Because he was the one
Yeah,
introducing.
yeah. I've always, because I've always had a hard time separating Play Cafe with Musical Cafe. But yeah,
Right.
between Jamie Greenblatt and Sandy Catston, and also oh shucks, the woman who is I think of her as a director more. She's blonde. I can't think of her name.
Yeah.
But in any case, but
Sorry.
all of them, they're
Yeah.
very. It's a very Loretta Janka. That's
Oh
who I
yeah,
meant.
Loretta. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, everyone makes sure that although it may be only 20 minutes, that you get it's top quality. And you
Right.
know, Rice Major, when he was involved, he made sure that that the music was just right. And Richard Jennings, he was sort of the overlord who made sure that everything, and everyone had a very, very calm, collective demeanor, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk more about writing, because when you and I talked, you were like, oh well, I haven't really done an awful lot. But writing, just the very fact of communicating
Mm.
via the paper, it's sort of a lost art. I had a guest on, Richard Harder, who runs Off Broadway West, and he's also a teacher. He
Mm.
talked about, there was a New York Times article that said that young people don't know how to write anymore. They don't know
Mm.
how to write essays, or I don't know what's happening in the schools today. I mean, when I was a kid, you had to get on a typewriter, a manual typewriter, and really
Yeah,
put, think words
yeah.
together and really put stories together. Do you think, in your opinion, is it a lost art, or do you agree with the article? I mean, what are you seeing?
I don't know. I mean, I was a poet in the schools for 20 years. That's what I actually ended up doing professionally for a long time. Another kids are still people. The impulse to put words down on paper and is still there. I don't think it's gone
Yeah.
away
You don't
completely.
think it's been, I don't know, curtailed to, there are a lot of folks who just text, they text message or whatever. Not a lot of folks even write emails anymore. I guess the younger generation, it's all just short text. I don't even know if people read novels
Yeah, I
anymore.
mean, I don't. I'm old-fashioned, so I still read books, like paper books, and I
Hmm.
hold them in my hand and I turn the pages. And some people don't, and a lot of people are getting and more information auditory, through their earbuds and listening to books on tape and stuff. I don't know if that's storytelling will never die. Storytelling is eternal. Storytelling is the oldest profession. Storytelling's been with us since we were all sitting around a fire before writing was invented. We had storytelling, and playwrights are storytellers. Theater makers are storytellers. Writers are storytellers. And so the forms change, but the essence of like me wanting to tell you something about my day and maybe act it out a little bit and dramatize it, and the wild beast that I
Hmm.
chased for miles through the underbrush, and the dangers that I went through, and the heartbreak and the love and all that. I'm always there's always going to be people needing to convey their experience of being human to each other. So I don't think storytelling is in any danger. I think the forms are different.
Yeah, no, no, I totally agree. It takes me back to, let's say a mother telling a child a story, just before bedtime,
Right.
or a grandmother telling, the story of, what their elders did or what have you, and how engaging that can be. No, you're absolutely right. Has it been a difficult or easier transition being a playwright? Because, there are all sorts of, I guess there's a format or there's a way in which you come into a theater. Well, let me ask you this: Have you had how many plays, if any, have you had produced or have worked on aside from the
Uh,
chain?
Probably about a half a dozen or so. I wrote a play called Saying Kaddish with my sister. So, I mean, I just want to revisit the other question of like, how did you get reconnected with theater? One thing
Yeah,
that
sure.
I saw Vagina Monologues in like 2001 or something when Eve Ensler came to town and she was doing it in San Francisco. I saw her doing it as a one-woman show in San Francisco. And then I went to a little tiny feminist bookstore in Berkeley and heard her speak, and I was just captivated. I was like, "Oh my God, this is what I want to do." The power of this. And then I started working on a play called Saying Kaddish with my sister. Kaddish is the Jewish prayer for the dead, and the play was about two sisters whose mother dies, and they say there's a tradition in Judaism where you say that prayer once a week every for like 11 months after a loved one dies, as a way to kind of it's a ritual that you do. So my sister and I did that after our mother died. We were long distance. We'd call each other up and say the prayer on the phone to each other, and just it was really nice. It was a great thing. We to stay connected in that way during that time. So in my play, though, the sisters don't get along, and one of them is an Israeli settler who is living on the disputed territories, and she's very Orthodox, and she's done that whole thing. And the other one's like a performance artist with pink hair, who does stand up.
One is connected, one's not connected with their
Right,
with
and then
their.
one is very connected to the religion and the tradition, but almost like too much so. Like I seem to be attracted to writing about people who are struggling hard with their the difference between their religious commitment and like the rest of the world. And the other one is kind of unmoored and untethered, and their connection is really with each other, but they have to fight to get it back. And that got produced. There's a theater in West Bloomfield, Illinois, right outside Detroit, called the Jewish Ensemble Theater, JET. and they took it and they did a real full production of it. So I did, that was awesome.
Awesome. Now, wow, that's
Yeah,
fantastic. I would have
yeah.
loved to have seen that. It's funny when you were mentioning that I did a play, Civil War Christmas, and there
Mm,
was a little piece where, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful collaboration where all sorts of cultures got to have their stories told through this telling, and it was told during the Civil War era. But there's a part where one woman has us chant Yeet Kadal, and
mm.
I
Yeah, that's the
don't.
first word in the Kaddish. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, all of us got an education on, I guess, the Jewish tradition, and it was
yeah.
sung at the same time of Silent Night, which was
Hmm.
very, very. It's a wonderful, interesting mixture of Judaism and Christianity.
Wow.
So it was very, very cool.
Yeah.
The one question that we've had a bunch of playwrights on. We've had Conrad Panganaban, who writes with Bindlestiff and Jeannie Baroga, and also
Mhm.
Scott Munson and a bunch of others. And one question that I have, writing, how do you find different voices? Let's say you have to write a character, like, in The Chain, you're
Mm.
writing a black character and a black
Right.
female character.
Yeah.
And let's say someone from who is Jehovah's Witness. As a man, it's difficult for me, or I have to have respect for writing a female
Right.
role
Right.
because I have to really understand what it is to be a woman as much as
Right.
I possibly can. How do you do it? I mean, is it just listening to other people? Is it listening to their stories? How do you step out of your, our proverbial box as a writer to write in other people's words or languages?
That's such a great question. I think with great humility and with huge amount of humility. I mean, I've been actually reflecting on, this last year, there's been this incredible, long overdue emergence of um, Black voices and in the theater world, as saying we want to be the makers. We are. I mean, there already are Black theater makers, but like I have a question in my mind now. I want to be able to write Black characters and all kinds of characters, but I don't want to overstep, and I don't want to be presuming. I mean, it's. Yeah, I want to write plays in which everybody can show up, in which I can write about any character that I want. But I also think that there's a lot of stories that Black playwrights are saying this is our material, um, and they're right. It is. So I'm wondering about that. It's a big question to me. Of like, what do I have the right to write about?
Yeah, and I don't think it's impossible. I mean, I think Steven Spielberg had written, oh shucks, The Color Purple, or at least he was
Right,
part of the production of Color Purple. And there was a bit of controversy. Oh, gee,
right,
Steven Spielberg is a Jewish guy. How can he do that? But
right,
it still rang true. And,
right,
we still got to see a wonderful performance by Whoopi Goldberg. And so, speaking as a Black man, I don't see that much of an issue. I mean, when someone says, hey, I'm in control, I'm a white person, you are not going to have control, or I'll give you a little bit of control, but I'm holding on to what I have. You see
right.
that a lot. So when I hear the struggle of Black artists wanting a greater voice in the theater community, I'm not sure if it's about, writers,
Mm-hmm.
usurping on the Black experience, but more executives or producers or those
Mm-hmm.
who own, or, like executive directors, basically, saying I'm holding on to my power and I don't want to give up my power just because you want, us to be on stage. So I didn't see anything wrong with it. Like, when I did The Chain, I thought that the characters that me and Rachel played rang true. It rang very true.
Well, that
And it's
makes
one
me
of
so
those things
glad.
that, we really don't talk about, like, religious differences. It gets to be a problem when you have stereotypes and
Hmm.
cliches.
Right.
And I'm sure you are attuned to that as well. Like I'm sure there are Jewish, cliches that, that that really get grates on
Oh
your
yeah.
nerves as well.
Yeah, but I started out talking about Lorraine Hansberry's beautiful play, The Sign in Sidney Brewstein's Window. It's an amazing play, and the main character, Sidney Brewstein, is a Jewish man, and Lorraine Hansberry was a Black woman, Black lesbian woman. But she had been married to a Jewish man for years, and she was very familiar. And she lived in New York, and she knew that guy. She knew that character very well. He was not a stereotype. He was an archetype, but he was real, and she wrote him beautifully because she's a strong, beautiful writer, and he rang true. So that gives me courage because, she was depicting her world, which was made up of black and white people. And it wasn't, she didn't live in an all black world. She lived, her friendships and her intimate relationships covered the waterfront. And so, I mean, it's just like what you were saying about writing women. You don't want to have plays that don't have any women in them, but you're just aware that when you go to write women, that you want to be careful to, write them as fully and as three-dimensionally as you can. And probably, the next time I write a black character, I mean, I'm sure I will. I share my work with friends who, come from different communities who can hopefully help point out to me if I'm slipping, if I'm stereotyping, if I'm, if I got it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the function of the stage readings. You have,
Right.
like, let's say, one or two or three stage readings, and you have someone who will give you good constructive criticism to tell you, hey, what's right or what's wrong. And that's actually a wonderful question. The collaborative process, like, let's
Mm.
say you alone, and a lot of writers, are sort of isolated, and you write whatever you've written, and
Yeah.
then you throw it out to actors and directors, and you sort of hope that they will cherish, your proverbial baby. That's how
Right.
I look at my pieces. And
Yeah.
sometimes I get a little nervous because I'm like, hey, oh, is that person approaching it the correct way? How do you feel about, let's say, have you had a bad experience working with someone who may not have respected your material?
Not bad, bad. I mean, when the production in more often, I have been surprised by directors and actors bringing out things in my words. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Don't suppress a sneeze.
Exactly, exactly. I just
My
had to move the
father's an
mic away.
audiologist. Never hold back a sneeze. You'll blow out your eustachian tubes. Um, I've had more often the opposite experience of feeling like the director and the actors brought out more layers and depth in my work than I even knew was there. So, they bring to life things that are two-dimensional on the page. I mean, I have so much respect for actors because they take a two-dimensional paper and they create a fully fleshed three-dimensional human experience out of it. Um, I know that the production in Illinois that I mentioned, I wasn't able to fly back and forth to Illinois for rehearsals because of money. So I only got there for the final thing, and by then it had all been set. And if I had been there earlier, I would have, if I would have piped up, and I couldn't. And there were some things that I would have done differently, but overall, just to get something up is great. And I also want to say one more thing about the racial piece. Norman,
Yeah, Norman
yeah,
G. Yeah,
Norman G. He often does the play cafe. He's often the actor there. And so I had written a play that was a man and a woman around a hot tub, and Norman played the man at a play cafe, just table read, cold read. He was great. He killed it. I hadn't originally conceived of that character as black, but listening to Norman read it, I thought he could be black. I mean, why not? And so, there's also that thing of like um, writing a character and realizing that, yeah, if a black actor plays him, it'll sort of it'll bring a different angle to things, that a different edge to things that might be really cool. Um, and so,
yeah, yeah. And that's, and minority actors, we love that. Say it's like, well, this character wasn't really written for a black person. But, oh, wait a minute, that's a good read. Okay, maybe. And
yeah,
all of a
I mean, if
sudden,
I would cast Norman in that in a minute, and um, I think a lot of my characters tend to sound Jewish when they start really talking, because those are the voices that are really embedded in my head.
mhm.
And I thought, well, maybe he could be a black Jew, I mean, they exist,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I
yeah.
don't know if you know this, but Norman is married to Mara, who was a Jewish woman, and so he practices a lot of the Jewish traditions. So
Well, he was nailing that dialogue in that sort of fast, snappy, aggressive, intellectually aggressive way that character
yeah,
would.
he knew the
Yeah,
language. Yeah, he knew the
yeah,
rhythm.
he had that. So I was like, oh, Norman could play this guy. Yeah, if we ever could get a production with a hot tub on the stage, which I think would be really hard. So I think it should actually be a radio play, in which case nobody will even know and it doesn't matter. So
Oh,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Are you seeing, because you mentioned being a bit of a feminist, and I'm sure you're still a feminist. I mean,
Yes.
you're a
Yeah.
teacher, and
I'm a
are
100%.
you seeing a lot of proper representation of women, let's say on stage or even as directors or whatever here in the Bay Area?
Yes. I think there's really great there's great feminist theater here, and there's a lot of strong. I mean, going to Play Cafe, those table read things, and I used to go regularly. I haven't been for the last while because I've been teaching on Thursday nights a lot, and yeah, there's a lot of, as you know, really powerful women in the Bay Area theater scene. I'm sure they're, still the statistics overall nationally are not good in terms of women getting their plays produced. That needs to move. But one of the other projects I've been involved with is when I got involved with doing the chain, I met Sheila Ramesh, who was the music director for the for that class of the chain, for May 2017. And she and I have collaborated on a song cycle, a feminist song cycle called "We Are Not Afraid of the Dark," that was supposed to have, and we had a performance scheduled for June 1st in New York City with three professional singers, singer actors, and it had been an amazing process. And then the pandemic and everything. Hopefully we'll get to do
Mm.
it next year.
Yeah, hopefully in the future.
Yeah.
While I think we have about 10 more minutes left, but I see that you are the Writing Salon. Can you tell me about the Writing Salon?
Oh yeah, happily. It's a school for grown-ups who want to write, and so it's people like yourself who have day jobs and are not ready to enroll in like a graduate program necessarily, but who really want to take a writing class. And we offer a variety of classes. There's screenwriting and playwriting. I've been teaching a memoir class for decades there called Write from Real Life, which I love. So I have people from all walks of life in my classes. Some of them have, MFAs in writing. Some of them have never written before. So, it's a really wide range. They come to the class because, they've had experiences in their lives and they want to write about them and they want to learn how to shape the narrative. And I actually have been using a lot of what I've learned in playwriting to help people shape their memoirs because, to make an arc, a character arc, to have a hero's journey, to have a beginning, middle, and end, all that kind of stuff.
Well,
This
then,
helped,
yeah, yeah, that is fantastic.
learning in one genre helped in another.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll totally we'll promote that. The Writing Salon. Is it a paid class, or can anyone join?
Yeah, yeah, it's paid. Anyone can join. It is, you do have to pay. The website is writingsalons.com. Currently, all the classes are on Zoom. They used to have like some remote classes, and then I was usually teaching on site. I didn't want to teach on Zoom because, I like being in a room with people. I like getting out of my house when I can. But it's actually turned out to be better than I feared. Zoom is actually working pretty well. So
No,
that's
that's
good.
fantastic. I was just thinking because I had a writing teacher, actually an acting teacher, but her name was Akonke, and she. This is when I was in high school, and she got all of us to write a journal. And she said, I want you to keep a journal. And of course, we were
Mm,
15 years old, and we were like, a journal. What are we going to write about? And of course, we didn't have any life experiences to write about, just writing about, I went to school and there's this girl that I like and blah, blah, blah. But ironically enough, I have kept the journal off and on from 1985 up to now. I write a journal every single day, even as of now,
that's
and it has
great.
really, really
Yeah.
helped. I mean, just talking and writing and specifically, I think it's the one medium that is so important. I mean, it's important in the job market because you're going to have to write a letter. Let's say an employment, a cover letter to gain employment.
Right.
You'll have to do some sort of a dissertation at the job or something like that. You'll have to maybe make a speech. You'll have to write a speech. So creative writing, I mean, really the arts have sort of been poo-pooed by a lot of folks who are like, hey, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be other things. But really creative writing is something that we take for granted. But I
Mhm.
would think it's probably the most important thing, the most important medium
Mm,
um, for individuals to take up. I mean, all of our great leaders, we remember them from what their speeches. Like I think of Kennedy, I think of even Peggy
mhm,
Newton, who wrote the speech for George Bush, you know, 1,000 points of lights and all that sort of
mm,
stuff. But writing, it's
mm.
something that we take for granted, don't you think?
I do, yeah, and I happen to know that you're a beautiful writer because I read Four Men in Paris, and it's an amazing
Oh,
play that you
thank
wrote.
you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no, I read that and I was like, "Damn, this is great. This is really great." Yeah, you're
Thank you so very, very much. Yeah, it's one of those things that had been percolating in my head, and finally I was like, you know what, let me put this thing on paper. So I would encourage anyone who is, you know, listening to the Yay, you know, pick up a paper and pick up a pencil and paper, or pull up your Microsoft Word document and just, you know, start writing, and maybe just a bunch of crap. But, you know, eventually it will become something amazing. And also, you know, join class like, you know, the writers, I got to open up my thing, the Writing Salon.
the writing salon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Check us out. There's all these different classes. There is playwriting and there is screenwriting and there's also memoir and fiction and poetry and like all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in the future? What do you want to do for the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years or so? Do you have any major plans?
Well, I've really kind of fallen in love with songwriting, and I love writing lyrics, and that was kind of a later in life discovery. Like, I grew up, I think, in the golden era of songwriting, like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and all those guys were just doing amazing songwriting, and I wrote poetry, and I am a poet, and I've got 4 books of poetry out, and um, I don't know why I didn't put it together until relatively later in life that, oh, I could write songs. And so I've been, kind of studying music and with my husband. I don't write melodies, I write lyrics and collaborate with composers, and I love collaborating. So if I could write some really good songs and they could get out there, I would be so happy. Um, I'm sure I will be continuing to write poems because I just always do. I would love to be part of a theater group. Once the pandemic is over and we can actually be together, I mean, my dream would be to be part of a theater group where I could do some writing, but also some of everything. Do some of the performing, some of the set painting. Just be in one of those groups where an old-fashioned theater group where people all pitch in and do everything. Um, I'll probably can. I've written essays, personal essays. I mean, I just don't like to confine myself. So um, I hope I get to continue to be of service in some way and also continue to make things. Because
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm sure you have enough. I was just thinking, I'm sure you have enough material to do sort of an anthology, you know, let's say the complete works of Alison Luterman.
At some point, I'll probably do a collected of the poems. I mean, I hope so. If I get another book out at some point, that would be fun. But I'm just always interested. I think most makers are. I'm always interested in what I'm just doing right now or next. It's not like there's not a big plan. There never has been like a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, but it's always like right now, Richard and I are working on the next draft of The Shyest Witch, and we just wrote another song. And after I get off the Yay with you, I'm going to go into rehearsal with him and with our actor who's in Baltimore who's playing the witch, and we'll rehearse her for that song. Um, and then we'll write another song at some point after this one's really set. We'll put it up on YouTube, and
Yeah.
then we'll write another song, keep going. So
Yeah. You have a newsletter as well, right? I'm looking at
right.
your, is it Desire Zoo, or was that just one little segment, or is it called Desire Zoo?
No, Desire Zoo was my next to last book. I just released another book of poetry in September called In the Time of Great Fires. The book before that was called Desire Zoo. My newsletter just comes out once a month, and you can sign up for it. Anybody can sign up for it by going to my website at alisonluterman.net, not .com, .net.
Yeah. And we'll have a
Um,
link to it that people can just
Thank
click
you.
on.
Yeah. So, and the newsletter is just like whatever I'm thinking about. It's often lately been political, but kind of with a spiritual and creative twist on it.
Yeah, which
Um,
is what we all need. Yeah. I think the newsletter is fantastic, and it sounds like you have other projects or whatever. So we'll put a link to all of that as well as the Writing Salon. We've hit the 1 hour mark, so I did you enjoy yourself?
yes, my God, this hour flew by in a minute. I'm like, really? An hour? Are you sure? Yeah,
No, it was
that was great. It's
fantastic. It was
great to see
fantastic.
you.
I mean, when a lot of people think about theater, they think, oh, I need to, you know, do my resume and get this, acting gig and perform here or there so I can get up my equity credits and I can move on to LA or New York or whatever. But then there you have individuals who are like, hey, I just want to form a community. I just want to be around people who want to create, who want to
Yeah,
put out some good vibes, some good, karma out in the world
right.
to we need people like that, and I consider you to be a person just like that. So
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that I met you and that we're still connected even through this crazy time. And yeah.
absolutely, no, yeah, thank you so much. All righty, so I will put this on YouTube and also the our podcast, the podcast app. For those who are listening, you're probably watching this on YouTube. If you are, please like and subscribe. Tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like. And if you're listening on the podcast app, we're on all podcasts, all major podcast apps, especially Spotify. And if you're a Android user, you can use the SoundCloud app or just go on soundcloud.com and you will find us. The Yay was created by theater people for theater people. If you have a show you want to advertise or if you just want to advertise yourself, let us know. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. I'm at Red Space Clay. Norman is at HoosierHoosier.com. Allison, do you use any social media?
I do. I'm on Facebook. Just my name. I'm on Instagram, but I never ever do anything or check it. It's pretty useless.
If people want to
Uh,
reach you directly, what do you recommend?
go to my website. You can contact me through the website at AlisonLuterman.net, or you can message me on Facebook.
There
Either of
you
those.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking for a songwriter, a playwright, a poet, an all-around great writer, you can't go wrong with Alison Luterman. All right, Allison, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. And as Norman and I always say, we got to find a better sign off, and we are out.